so Marvin Gaye could sing them out of their clothes. But could he shake them out of their shoes? Here's the story about how Marvin Gaye almost played for the Detroit Lions. Alright, so boom. The story kind of starts with Lem Barney, a Hall of Famer who was drafted by the Detroit Lions in 1967. He was playing a morning round of golf at Palmer Park, one of the best courses in the city, and they were friendly to black golfers. The Brown Bomber himself, Joe Louis, even played there. Though Lem hadn't seen any of them, he heard that the Miracles, the Temptations, and other Motown acts played there as well. And his favorite singer, Marvin Gaye, well, he not only played there, but he lived not far from the course. So one day he decided, I'm gonna just pull up on him. He asked the worker at the golf course for Marvin's address. Well, it was not that odd of a request coming from the NFL's Defensive Rookie of the Year, so they gave it to him. And he shot to Marvin's crib, quick, underlay, ASAP. ASAP, ASAP. It was only a little over a mile from the course. I imagined in my mind that he rang the doorbell and knocked like Lorenz Tate's character did in the Inkwell. So, what happened? Marvin answered the door. Cool as a fan, I also imagine. When Lem introduced himself as Lem Barney, Marvin asked, Lem Barney from the Lions? He said he knew who he was and invited him in to stay for breakfast. They had a really good conversation and time flew. Barney kinda lost track of time and saw that he had less than 30 minutes to make it to training camp. He would later say, I had to run red lights like I was Mario Andretti. He pushed his new Thunderbird to the limit. He had to travel about 13 miles, but then had to get into the building, dress in his pads, and make it out to the field, all in less than 30 minutes. Somehow he made it on time.
Barely.
Now, this is a pretty crazy story to tell. Oh, nothing, just shot around the golf. Had breakfast with Marvin Gaye at his crib. Wait, what? Barney's friend Mel Farr asked him why he was almost late to practice. Side note, ironically, Mel Farr was the NFL's Offensive Rookie of the Year in 1967 as well. Yup, Detroit had the Offensive and Defensive Rookies of the Year. Barney told him about how he was just, busting it up with the stubborn kind of fella himself. Farr was super excited about that and wanted to meet him too. Barney told him, I got you. I'm gonna set it up. And just like that, all three were locked in. Marvin started pulling up to their football practices and games, and they all started playing pickup basketball together. And of course, golf. It's crazy that we never got that Marvin Gaye vs. Prince basketball game, like beers versus blowouts. Now, Marvin Gaye had many iterations and eras. There was the smooth-faced crooner. There was the way history probably remembers him most, the bearded anti-war, anti-racism protest singer. And nestled in the middle was his time as one of the greatest duos of all time, next to Tammy Terrell. As Barney and Farr were becoming really close friends to Marvin, he was unwittingly entering one of the toughest times of his life. That same year, early in the football season, Tammy Terrell would collapse in his arms on stage on October 14, 1967. She had been suffering from migraines her whole life, and the diagnosis was grim. A brain tumor. She would never fully recover. And Marvin didn't either. He was quoted as saying he couldn't perform because in his heart, he could no longer pretend to sing love songs for people. He stopped singing and recording. In the middle of a deep depression, it's funny how the turmoil in America would eventually land Barney and Farr as background singers on an all-time classic song, and will find Marvin looking to make his way to the NFL. Stick with me, I'm gonna bring it all together for you. Around this time, the country was unraveling. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy were all assassinated. The Watts, Detroit, and Newark riots showed the frustration of blacks in the inner cities. And Marvin's brother Frankie served in the Vietnam War. He came home and told Marvin the crazy story. Like, crazier than King Von. We were over there dying in an endless war that many didn't agree with in the first place. And the guys that managed to make it home alive were treated terribly. Marvin couldn't shake the feeling. Motown pleaded for him to start working, and he refused. He said he couldn't sleep. He couldn't stop crying. He said the notion of singing 3-minute songs about the moon in June just didn't interest him. But hear me out. A song that came from anti-war protesters being harassed and assaulted by police? Now, Marvin could work with that. O.B. Benson, who was the bass singer for the legendary Four Tops, came up with the beginnings of what would eventually become What's Going On. They didn't bring it to Marvin first, and it was turned down by different Motown acts, which was good for us music lovers because the sauce from the song came from Marvin. Benson eventually took it to Marvin, who told Barney and Farr about it after a round of golf. He wanted to give the song to the Originals, who were a group that he had taken on to help. Farr and Barney both urged Marvin to do the record himself. Soon after, Marvin finally agreed. He came up with this song's title while having a beer after another round of golf with the duo. He threw them a curveball though. He'd only record the song under one condition. Barney and Farr had to do the background vocals. Mel Farr thought it was a joke because he said he couldn't sing. But Marvin was serious, as a heart attack. Now when the song starts, you hear, "Hey brother, what's happening? Solid, right on." Well, that's Lynn Barney and Mel Farr. They also sang background on the whole song. And not long after recording the song, Marvin hit him with another haymaker. They did a song together. Now he wanted them to hit the field together. Trying out for the Detroit Lions, or any professional football team for that matter, is hard. But trying out at 31 with no prior experience is insane. Marvin didn't want anyone not telling him to do it. Smokey Robinson said he was crazy, but Marvin was so serious that he was rocking with him. And Marvin was really serious. He said he'd rather catch a pass and score a touchdown at Tiger Stadium than rack up another gold album. Barney and Farr couldn't guarantee a tryout, let alone a spot on the team, but for their friend, they would do all they could and give it a try. Marvin immediately started training, running 4 to 5 miles a day and lifting weights. He even built a gym at his house. He trained with Farr, Barney, and future Hall of Fame receiver Charlie Sanders. Word started to travel around the city, or I guess you could say, through the grapevine. Waka waka waka. Get it? Through the grapevine. Pa, pa, pa. So word started going around that Marvin Gaye had been preparing for a tryout with the Lions. Joe Schmidt, the Lions head coach, thought it had to be a joke. After a lot of convincing, he finally told them to tell Marvin to come to his office. Lynn Barney called Marvin, and I guess he said, "Hey brother, what's happening?" Nah, but he said, "Guess what?" And Marvin was like, "What is it?" Then Barney told him, "Coach Schmidt wants to meet with you." And Marvin was like, "Oh, we lit." But he really said, "I know this is it. This is my shot. Don't drive, I'll come by and pick you up in the limo." And Marvin didn't waste time selling himself in an interview. He told Schmidt that he believed that he could not only start, but score a touchdown the first time he touched the ball. Schmidt asked did he have any footage of when he played in college. Marvin never attended college. He was like, "College? So what about high school?" Never played in high school either. He had dropped out at 17 and went into the Air Force. And Schmidt was not trying to hear it. But then, for some reason, just before training camp, he had a change of heart. The Lions were holding a 3-day workout at the University of Michigan. He couldn't guarantee anything, but Schmidt would try out Marvin at several positions. That's all Marvin wanted, a chance. Whatever happened after that, he was cool with. In a sense, he had already achieved his goal, a chance at playing in the NFL on the same team as two of his best friends. For someone who never played real high-level football, he was pretty good. But is pretty good enough for a roster spot? Schmidt later said that he thought about the headhunters like Jack Tatum, Deacon Jones, or Dick Butkus, trying to kill Marvin as he came across the middle. That was too much of a burden for him. Marvin didn't get a roster spot. His tryout was the beginning and the end. He would go back to recording classics, and Barney and Farr would continue their paths on the gridiron. Even though Marvin didn't make the team, the mental commitment to the tryout helped clear his mind and pull him out of that dark place. Farr said he never saw Marvin happier than he was at that time. Barney and Farr would remain friends with Marvin for the rest of his life, though his drug-free era of exercise and mental clarity would not. After, retiring from the NFL, Marvin's career was, to say the least, tumultuous. Albums like Trouble Man, Let's Get It On, I Want You, and the not-so-sneak disc Here My Dear further solidify him as a living legend. Foreign Borny last saw Marvin in June of 1983 at the Detroit stop of his 1983 tour, which would be the last of his career. 12 years had passed since the release of What's Going On, ironically on Super Bowl Sunday of 1971. The song Sexual Healing for Marvin's 1982 album Midnight Love placed him right back on top of the music world. In 1983, he snagged the only 2 Grammys of his career, which if you ask me, is a travesty. But, you know how we feel about the Grammys. We don't care. He also sang a soulful version of the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Game at the Forum that still lives today. All of this, somewhat of a swan song, as the end was near. He was murdered by his father less than a year later. Lem Barney and his wife attended Marvin's funeral. Mel Farr said he'd never met a more genuine person than Marvin Gaye. He said, I think all of the geniuses, they kind of live in their own world. The Michael Jacksons, the Whitney Houstons, those kind of people that left us out here early, but they were real, the true geniuses. Shout out to Marvin Gaye and his almost time in the NFL. So, brother, shout out to Marvin Gaye.
You a better singer, or was Marvin a better football player?
You put me betwixt and between, but I think Marvin could have played ball if he started early on. He didn't start early at all. He didn't play any athletics at all. But I think had he got in and got some hits and ran some patterns or played defensive back or whatever he wanted to do. Coach tried him out at linebacker. Coach Schmidt did, Joe Schmidt. Tried him at linebacker, tried him at fullback, and he tried him at wide receiver. And he did pretty good. After working out with Mel and I and hanging out with us and going to the games and really getting involved in it, but he just didn't have what it took to get him over the hill. I'm Len Barney, former Detroit Lion, number 20. First 20 from the B category, Barney, Billy, and Barry Sanders. Sing background with Marvin Gaye on What's Going On now. Meeting Marv, I left training camp one day during my second year with the Detroit Lions and went out because they told me he was at Palmer Park. He played a lot of golf at Palmer Park. So I said, well, this is going to be a chance for me to go out and meet him. So after morning practice out at Cranbrook, where we had our practice during training camp, I left there and came down Woodward Avenue, 7 Mile, Palmer Park, right there on the left as I turned in. And I went in and asked the manager, was Marvin Gaye out playing today? And they looked on the roll. They said, no, he's not playing today, sir. But if you go down, continue down 7 Mile, he's second block on out of drive. I hit the doorbell, and it's a chime. Bling, bloom, 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 bling, bloom. And as I'm waiting, it stopped, and I was getting ready to hit it again. And all of a sudden, the door opened. It's Marvin. I said, yeah, man, what's up, man? I said, look, Mr. Gaye, I said, my name is Lem Barney, man, and I just come by there just to tell you what a great musician and entertainer I think you are. He said, who'd you say you were? I said, Lem Barney. He said, not the guy that played with the Lions. I said, yeah. He said, well, you're too small, man. I said, no, it's me, man. He said, well, come on in. I said, okay, I just wanted to stop by and just to talk to you, man. I've appreciated you, and I love your music, and I think you're a great singer, man. He said, well, I like that, man. He said, I think you're a pretty good ball player, too. I saw some of your preseason games. He must have talked about an hour and a half, and all of a sudden I look at my watch. I got 35 minutes before the second practice was to be done, and I got to leave there and get out to Cranbrook. I must have ran every red light on Woodward. We exchanged numbers, and from there we made contact from time to time. We started going to the games on Sunday, and afterwards we'd go to different restaurants for dinner, and the wives and the team and all, and Marvin would go with us, and sometimes he would entertain. We was over at Marvin's, and he was going through what he was getting ready to record. He said, all right, Lem, you and Mel, come on, go with me. I said, where are you going? He said, we're going over and record this. I said, okay. Well, we'd been over there before with him, but there wasn't no we in it. Yeah, what's happening? Lem, you take this part, and Mel, you take this part. Right on. You know, I said, wow, you recording this? He said, yeah, you're going to be on a record. So when it first come, say, brother, what's up? Yeah, brother, like solid, right on. Came out to be a smash. I mean, I didn't think nothing was going to come out of it, but it was a joy for the both of us. And then received a gold record. I mean, hey, it's like Super Bowl. It was a joy for me to have met Marvin, and the relationship that we established was just like a dream come true. I think that I got to put that on top of football. Best I did in football was made 7 Pro Bowls, 1 playoff in my 11-year career, 1 singing background. I got a gold record. So.
This almost didn't happen, right?
So what's interesting, I called my uncle Barry Gordy yesterday and I said, I'm doing this interview. Tell me what you remember about that recording. And he said, I remember Marvin coming to me and saying he felt divinely guided to do this album, that he had to write this song. And my uncle was trying to tell him, no, you don't need to do this. It's not good for your career. You're making great songs with girls and love songs. Why protest music? And Marvin said, this is just really important. And my brother is fighting in Vietnam. I've got to do this.
Wow.
And he said, I want to awaken mankind. I want to awaken the minds of mankind. And when he said that to Barry Gordy said, then you've got to do this.
Wow.
Isn't that great?
Great. It's a great story about a powerful song.